draft physics video. Science, physics. Science and physics. Anyway, it's this the Theoria guy again, right? Theoria. So, call him that anyway. I get this whole let's go back to the Greek thing and all that kind of crap doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. People hadn't figured out what a bacterium yet. Didn't have flushing toilets. I mean, come on. Had limited perception skills. No telescopes. Come on. Anyway, give them credit for what they did with what they had. Living in absolute horror, they did pretty well, but really, it's not a blueprint for the modern man. So, this is his style. Yeah, he's really thinned down. This video is just a rag on people, making fun of their name. Come on. Einstein didn't choose his name. But anyway. So there's not too much meat in here, but I'm going to play the video anyway. I should be able to get to my points. And, that's the whole point, really, right? There's got to be some... Look, I'd like to have a conversation about physics, and I'm not going to read from anybody's Bible. And frankly, I don't, from my perspective, right, I'm arguing with the Catholic Church, and you're basically voodoo. So, I mean, I don't, yeah, it's different than the Catholic Church. It's really different, but it's still, fuck that. It's voodoo. So anyway. But probably somebody faxing me. That's the new game they're playing. They're faxing me. Hello? Yes, another fax. Thank you. Appreciate it. You're too cool. You micro penists. You don't have a penis. You just have foreskin, fucker. Skanky little piece of foreskin between your legs. Oh, makes you a woman. Oh, anyway, moving on. So at the end of the video, he talks about the wine debate. So I just thought I'd play that part first, just because it's kind of ironic, in the sense that this video was such a rag. I mean, just ragged. I can't seem to get it to go back further, so I have to start from here. Maybe, yeah, maybe it won't even do that. Oh, come on, YouTube. I gotta reload it, I guess. It's not gonna do anything I'm telling it to do. So,
hey,
that's the beginning. I want to do the end.
Everything is fields,
There we go.
and fields are not particles.
Right, so he doesn't like field theory as stated because everything's a field, but it's not a field of particles. It's not a field of anything with a thing to it. It's a thing that's made of nothing. The woo 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 woo, and the woo woo is going woo 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 along. So, yeah, I'm arguing that, look, the idea of the field, okay, some field theory is actually almost rational, where they actually pixelate the entire universe, and they say, look, the idea is each location in the universe has a vector, and they almost got it there. And if they just give that vector a movement at the speed of light and recognize that that vector collides with all the other vectors, and there's a constant interaction taking place, even in empty space. There's a bunch of action happening, but it's not action that makes sparks. There's no little pieces that fly off. It's just complete interaction in and of itself. No heat involved, nothing involved. It's just a transfer. One thing goes this way and one thing goes this way. Two things leave going this way and that way, but what they really did was bounce off of each other. Well, anyway, and that if you do that in a vacuum, the speed of that interaction is what we call the speed of light. And the dirtier you make the environment, it'll be some lesser speed. The more interactions, the slower the speed. The speed of interaction is the speed of light. And that could be for two different reasons, but I won't get into those, because those are subtleties.
Thank you. Come again.
This will take forever, probably.
And oh, by the way, if you'd like to debate me on any one of these things that I've mentioned in this video...
Yeah, I'd like to, but I can't draw a picture of them. I can't do anything with them. I can't make anything of them. I can't figure out how mechanically what you're saying works. I mean, you just described a photon. I'm sort of thinking, well, maybe he thinks the frequency is built into like little wheelie round parts, or the coaxial cables are really short, and then there's a whole bunch of little short coaxial cable. I can't make anything out of it. I can't make a mental image. I can't give it any structure where I can say, okay, no, I don't think, it's no way it has fins like that. No, no, no. I can't, how can I argue it? It's too amorphous. It's too vague to make anything out of it.
I've spent more time and research on field theory than everybody watching my channel combined times 1,000.
Well, I think that's an exaggeration. I really do. I mean, there are, I'm not saying that people watching your videos, obviously they're uprating this kind of drivel. So yeah, I don't think they know too much about physics. Yeah. Tesla was, he was a nice guy and all that kind of crap, but fuck, come on. This conspiracy theory that somehow the government stole all Tesla's great ideas. I mean, Tesla hung out with Mark Twain, for fuck's sake, one of America's best writers. He couldn't explain it to Mark Twain and have Mark Twain write it up for him? Fuck.
Love to debate, and by debate I don't mean argue, I mean debate.
Well, I don't know what that means. Debate is you're going to make fun of Einstein's name and then quote Tesla making fun of his hair, and gee, that's such a great debating tactic. I'll just make fun of him. I'll demean him by talking about how fat or short he is. Wink, wink.
And please, amuse me and yourself by let's engaging in a debate on field theory. Because
right. Well, I'm not going to defend, I'll defend field theory in the sense that, okay, if we can establish that virtual photons are not virtual, that they're actual, and that I'll give you a cause for them, and that will establish that the bent space kind of thing, yeah, that's kind of bogus. Sorry, faxing. Yes, you're hilarious. Hello? Yes. Oh, he's from Terrapin. Yeah, how am I doing? I'm not taking phone calls today. That's how I'm doing. Yeah, some other little spammer. World full of liars. I love when they ask me, how you doing? What? Like, you actually give a fuck, you cunt. You call me up and ask me how I'm doing insincerely? I hope you get run over by a truck today. That's what I hope. Your wife and your kids too, motherfucker. You're scum. You're going to ask me insincerely how I'm doing? And we let this crap walk the earth? I know lizards who aren't rude enough to ask me how I'm doing insincerely. Whole nother theory. Humans suck. You want to debate that theory?
as I love to debate it, and I guarantee you, I will destroy you. And
yeah, okay. Like I said, as long as we establish, I'm going to argue that there is a field of particles, that they function kinetically. That is, they just exchange directional information. They bang into each other. The thing going that way ends up going that way. The thing going that way goes that way, and that's it. Nothing else. No pieces fly off, no half moves, no quarter angles, none of that kind of crap. Complete interaction. One thing exchanges identity with the other thing, period. And that's what the field is made out of. And that field creates gravity and it creates magnetism. And the only distinction is this polarization thing. Okay, so it's a frisbee. This is the field. The field is made of a gazillion, zillion, zillion times a zillion, zillion little tiny frisbees. Okay, they can fly this way or this way or this way, any kind of angle. They're coming at you, edge on. They're moving the speed of light, in the sense that every time they have interaction, it takes a quanta of time. And, what else? They have a straight vector. Their vector never changes, essentially. Because even when they interact, something's still going the way they're going, technically. Unless they interact with a solar system, an atom, then they can have their direction changed. But that's the only way. That's the only way you can terminate the destiny of a frisbee. Is it has to hit a solar system. It has to hit something orbital. And then the orbit will throw it anywhere it chooses based on time when it decides to release it. But that's the only way direction can be changed. Only way photons can be bent. They have to interact with matter, orbiting stuff.
Discussion on field theory. Absolutely, unequivocally, without any hesitation. Let's do it. I love to debate field theory.
Okay, I'm game as long as, like I said, I don't have to defend Mark Green or something because he's an idiot.
Okay. Catch you later.
Okay, well, we'll kind of catch you right now, actually. So let's catch him right now. Game begins.
Hey, obviously a lot of people who watch the videos that I do on photography aren't interested in the videos that I do on field theory, and vice versa. Sometimes, obviously so, they certainly do overlap, because what is photography other than, of course, if you're a master photography expert in composition and light manipulation. Now,
yeah, well, really, technically, I don't see much relationship between the art of a good photograph and physics, but whatever. I mean, yes, they both have photons in common, but that's about all.
it is an absolute, undeniable fact that every part in human history has always thought that they had a correct handle on the nature of the universe.
Right, and some are right and some are wrong. So I would argue that the guy 350 years ago who said, hey, you know what, this gravity thing looks just like shadows and pressure fields, and there's low pressure and the stuff moves into low pressure, so there's little bits that are pushing things, yes. And everybody mocked him and laughed at him, and yes, he was right. Yeah. I'm sure the first people that talked about round Earth, everybody's, oh, you silly person, I've been to the edge and looked over, you're silly. But, of course, they were wrong. And we know some things now, though, right? Not everything is debatable anymore.
Believe it or not, however, and this is easily provable, the ancient Platonists, the Pythagoreans, and some Neoplatonic Platonists, which is why I translate ancient Greek, and have been doing so for many years, including ancient Prakrit, had a far, far, far better grasp of cosmic mechanics than we...
I don't know where you get the time for all this stuff, but whatever. Good on you, I suppose. I just really don't know how you seem to be doing everything. The whole world seems to be running on your whatever, mojo. But whatever.
Now, I mean, they literally sat around. I mean, they weren't worried about paying bills and property taxes and buying the latest microwave or DSLR camera. And all you need to do is isolate yourself and have a very logical brain. And there is an ancient...
Well, really, I think you need a little more than that. You need a few tools and instruments and whatnot to be able to really get it, you know, to do the experiments necessary to, you know, rule things out and such. It takes a little bit of work. Tools.
Lost art, and I plan on writing a book about it, as well as I've written many articles about it. And it's called
Well, it'd be good if you link to them or something, but whatever. I guess it's under your secret code name, Michelle Obama or something. I don't know.
Abduction or retroduction, not like you abduct a child. It is a type of thinking methodology whereby which very abstruse principles of nonlinear comprehension of ontological...
Kind of funny that the only other person I heard use the word abstruse was Feynman. Yeah, that's just kind of a, you know, I mean, I'm definitely, you know, yeah, maybe I've lived a sheltered life, or maybe I don't pay attention to people who use words like abstruse, but, yeah, it just turns out that way. I figured he was saying it wrong. I would say obtuse. See, like obtuse triangle. It's crookedy. But abstruse, whatever. Whatever floats your boat there, fella. I guess it's got to be something that floats it because, you know, you're a little heavy.
Principles can be understood or grasped. Now, getting to the point of light. Now, it is true that there really only are two people that are intelligent in this world. And I don't mean wise, I'm just talking about intelligent. There is a large...
I don't know, what's the point of this? You know, whatever. Trying to quantify the human contributions in such a manner just doesn't seem to be much point in it. But go ahead, play your comparison game.
Group of sheep. Bah! That you're brought up and brainwashed that Einstein was a really, really intelligent person.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a bunch of Catholics who think the Pope has something going for him. So, yeah, there's all kinds of people with loony ideas. But clearly Einstein was clever enough, you know, to write some very, very convoluted math that apparently comes up with answers that are somewhere close to the truth. So, good on him for that. But, yeah, the theory behind it, you know, he pretty much admitted he hadn't advanced his understanding. Right, 2 years before his death, he stated, I hadn't advanced my understanding of photons one iota in the last 60 years, or whatever he said. It's pretty much a statement right there that, yeah, I'm still confused. So you want to argue with a guy who's basically saying, yes, I'm still confused. We don't have the answer yet.
It turns out that Einstein was a moron. By the way, in German,
it just seems a little excessive, but I think Einstein was fundamentally wrong. E equals mc squared, got it. Bingo, bang, good one. The rest of that relativity crap and bent space, yeah, just a canard, just a creation. So I'll explain it a little bit. I mean, I explain it simply, you know. This whole idea of dimpling space, and I just explained this, all this is doing is creating the necessary energy, right? Because you need energy to explain why these things are moving towards each other. So Einstein created energy out of empty space by just saying, look, I'll dent this space, and that creates the energy going down, because gravity, the thing he's explaining, is pushing them down the well, and then they've got momentum, and they go back up the well. And so he's creating a source of energy, and he's using the very thing he's supposed to be explaining, which is gravity, to make the energy. So he isn't really doing it. So he just creates this space-time notion, bends it, creates an artificial source of energy. But all he's really explaining is the idea that there is a convergence. All right? That everything converges, and it converges based on its location in this field of stuff. And the point is low pressure, high pressure. So if I block force by absorbing it, by consuming its identity, and I give away identity in some other directions, clearly this object is not going to be hit by this object. It's going to be hit by this object, and it's going to move this way because it's going to end up absorbing more of this because it's getting more of that. We're a reflection of the fields around us. The fields around us transform us. They go through us. We absorb elements of the imbalance they have, and we become part of that imbalance. And it takes time because we have lots of little bits. So any directional change for a thing that has many, many little pieces spinning around each other, you first have to get this guy to go this way, and then you have to get this guy to go this way, and you got to get this guy to do this way. And they all have to be doing it simultaneously for this ever to go as fast as the speed of light. They all have to be doing it. And so if only one of them's doing it every 1/1,000,000th of a millisecond, then your velocity isn't going to be very high. It's going to be very slow because it has to be 1/1,000,000th of the speed of light. Not complicated, mostly. But anyway, yeah, so that's enough of that.
Einstein means one stone, which is a slant, meaning you've got only a couple rocks in your head. Einstein, one stone.
Yeah, whatever. Again, this whole, you know, my name means one who throws spears or something. Hey, it's a good name, after all. Look at that. It matches.
the name Einstein actually means idiot, by the way. How ironic.
I don't think it's ironic at all. I think it's that's kind of like oxymoronic that you'd even bring it up. I mean, you're almost insulting your own intelligence by thinking this is somehow a relevant debating piece of evidence or reasoning. Ooh, Einstein's name means one who sits in mud and masturbates. Oh, therefore, that's what Einstein is. Now, I think that's just kind of going too far, fella.
Einstein was a moron. Okay?
That is just an excessive statement compared to who and what. Shit. I mean, it's kind of a silly thing to say. I think it's a silly thing to say. I mean, even if you just gave him credit for doing the, you know, some of the thought experiments were clever.
Now, who are you going to trust? There are only two factions in this world. The guy that loves...
Well, see, now that's just silly. There's only two factions, so, you know, you're just saying that it's my cult, zombieism, and Catholicism, and that's all there are in the world. It's me, the zombieites, the zombieites, and the Catholics. No, there's a lot of other shit out there.
Peace, and that invented 100% of the modern world.
Well, this is just so silly. 100%. Another preposterous exaggeration. Tesla spent his life trying to make a giant ray gun to end war. Yes, because as soon as somebody has the giant ray gun, they win, right? First one to the giant ray gun wins. I mean, it really was. I mean, yes, I love the idea of him living in New York City and feeding pigeons. Okay, that's all quite nice. And taking little broken-winged ones home and nursing them and such. Very kind. Very nice. But, you know, his ambition in his life was kind of insane. He squandered and pissed away millions of dollars. He wasn't even clever enough to figure out how to, like, buy a home of some kind and pay off the mortgage. Lived out of hotels and ate at restaurants. It's not very good financial planning.
And that would be Nikola Tesla, okay? The guy that actually understood much of how the universe works.
Right, okay, so I'm supposed to believe he understood how the universe works, and then we would all believe that somehow, someday, they're actually going to create some kind of ray gun that doesn't create any kind of friction. It just creates this huge, giant energy transfer, instantaneous zapping. No, it's never going to happen. The physical force dynamics are there. A lot of energy has to go in. And if you shoot the thing in the atmosphere, you're going to burn the crap out of it.
Unfortunately, two gigantic trunks of his dynamic theory of fields was lost forever, and his admission...
So again, this is one of these conspiracy theories. Like, poor Tesla didn't get a chance. The guy lived to be 90 fucking years old. He knew, like I said, some of the most famous physicists and thinkers and philosophers of his time. Mark Twain, again, great writer. If he had something to say that he could put in some kind of rational conception, I think Mark Twain would have loved writing a science book paper for him. I think he would have enjoyed it very much, but I don't think he could understand what the fuck he was talking about.
To be owned by the government, and I forget what laboratory they admitted holding it at, but they won't release it.
Yes. That's kind of a vague conspiracy. Well, it's some laboratory somewhere, and they admit they haven't given it all away. No, they've admitted that they stored it, because obviously it had some significance in terms of Tesla was basically talking about making ray guns to blow up the Russians. So I guess it's the kind of thing where there might be some sort of security interest, and so then they went through it all, scrutinized it, said, oh gee, this is all a bunch of crap, and then they released it, and now it's in some museum in Prague or whatever. So this seems like kind of bullshit. But whatever, go ahead, bullshit all you want.
So, and then there's another person who didn't invent anything. Now, he did get a Nobel Prize, not for relativity, which is still a theory, and by the way, that theory has far less credence today, even among his lovers, than it did, say, 30, 40 years ago.
Yes, the whole bent space thing is just plain silly. I concede Einstein's wrong about that. What he's right about is the fact that it's a convergence. That this is the this is the proper narrow field implication. Gravity only exists when something's in gravity. Okay, so yes, if the force only exists, the space only gets bent when something masses interact with each other. There's no gravity without something accelerating in the field. So something has to be in the field and it has to accelerate in the field for gravity to be induced, which means it's a partnership. The thing induces it in the other thing induces it in it, and it accelerates until it reaches its maximum gravity possible, its maximum acceleration. And that's what happens. That's the reality. Otherwise, gravity just flies right through everything. If there's nothing to interact with, the gravity just goes right through the thing. There's no blocking, there's no absorbing, there's no acceleration, there's no movement. That means there's no force. So there's no imbalance in the field until something imbalances the field, until something bends it. But that bending is not really bending, it's shadowing. It's a shadow, it's not a bend in space. It's a literal, real shadow against force. You absorb force, force can't go where it was going because you absorbed it and you obtained its velocity.
That is extremely telling. He did get a Nobel Prize for something else. Now, it is true that accurate observations do not translate into accurate explanations. The photoelectric effect. You probably don't know.
Well, and the Browning emotion thing, yeah. Kind of important stuff.
I know what it was. I mean, I've written about it in my book on magnetism. But he made correct observations with incorrect conclusions. Now, the entire basis of current physical theory, physics, by the way, physical, is based upon the notion that cosmic mechanics, or Mother Nature, if you will, is an insane hooker on crack with a bag of magical particles.
Yeah, well, that's incorrect, and I'd just say that your magical vortexes of vortexery are just as amorphous, untangible, unrealizable, uncontemplatable, as vacuous as the quantum photon that magically doesn't know where it is and doesn't know where it's going until all of a sudden we don't look at it and then it knows where it's going, and what the fuck? Yeah, that's bullshit.
You see, they can never understand, nor can they explain instantaneous action at a distance.
Well, that doesn't happen anywhere, so that's why they don't explain it. Einstein didn't think it existed. I don't think it exists. I don't think there's any evidence that it exists. I think it's all convoluted, just totally strangled experiments to try to demonstrate it. This idea that, oh yeah, I know exactly which photon is 4 miles and 74 feet away. Because I made it here and it's over there and I know exactly where it is. So they can't figure out where it is when it's heading for the 2 slits, but somehow they know exactly where it is when it's 4 miles away. Yeah, I don't think they do.
IAED, nor have they correctly explained light. Okay?
Right, I would agree. They haven't correctly explained it. This wave shit is absolute nonsense. Things in the world have frequency. Things go bonk, bonk. You know, I could bang a hammer on the desk. Anybody going to be saying I'm waving? No, I'm I'm creating an all or nothing impact at a constant period. All right, there's no wave. It's a frequency. Period. Period. Right? It's a period between incidences. That's all it is. And yes, waves have a period between incidences. But that doesn't make everything a wave, because periods sometimes are in the form of a wave. Right? Right.
There is no such thing as a wave-particle duality.
I agree. There's just quanta. There's little tiny bits, and if the bits are, let's see how to describe. If they don't have if they're not coming at a constant frequency, that they don't have a standard period between them, matter thinks they're gravity. If they do have a period, then they'll be absorbed and reflected, or they'll be absorbed and then the mass will increase. So they'll either be absorbed by a solar system, or the solar system will throw them out at a new vector, in a new direction. So photons, things with frequencies, can be affected by entering gravity pools where gravitons, photons without a frequency, just go right through, generally speaking.
As I've told you before already, every age of humanity, as far as its science goes, has always thought it was right, and 20, 30 years later, sometimes 40, 50, 70...
Right, but this is like one of those fallacy things, okay? Because it happened yesterday doesn't mean it's going to happen tomorrow kind of fallacy or something, right? The fact that there's no terminal end to knowledge is a fact. I mean, is a fallacy. There's a terminal end. You figure out that the world's not flat. You figure out that astrology is bullshit. You figure out certain things and you say, yeah, we know it now. Statistically, we've done the experiment. You flip a coin and it's heads or tails. It's not middles. You know, that kind of thing.
Times more, it's always proven. They look back and they go, oh, those guys were idiots. They had no idea. They were talking out of their asshole.
Yeah, well, they were, okay? I mean, voodoo, ether in your brain, demons possessing you. No, brain tumor. I mean, they got a lot of things wrong. They were ignorant. They didn't have probes and telescopes and microscopes and accelerators and all that shit.
Einstein has set back cosmic mechanics understanding by 100 years.
Well, I would agree that Einstein made a mistake. He just got it wrong. He contrived a dimension and put the energy in that dimension, the fake dimension of time-space and space-time, and it's a canard. It's an inaccurate. It's a cheat, you know, because time and space don't have energy. So you should know right from the beginning that doesn't make any sense. Empty space and time, how could they create force? No, the force exists in the universe, and it's that force that is manifesting in this movement called gravity and magnetism.
He is actually starting to wane. I've actually noticed over the past 20 years that those who know who the hell Tesla was has gone like this.
Yeah, well, whatever. A lot of truthers and nutballs are coming out of the woodwork, and it's all kind of tragic and sad, actually. Everybody's just going on all kinds of, you know, hidden dimensions, exploring hyperspace, blah, 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 blah. I mean, come on. It's just a bunch of wacky woo-woo.
It's those who understand that Tesla's comments about Einstein, about him being a fuzzy-haired crackpot.
Right, now that says what about Tesla's character right there, right? Isn't that saying something right there? Pointing out that he has fuzzy hair and he's a crackpot. Well, Einstein could say Tesla's a homeless clothes whore. Yeah, there. Does Einstein win now?
And the notion of curved space, which is nothing other than the absence of inertia. The notion
okay, curved space, the absence of inertia. It's not really the absence of, right? It's the creation of inertia. So I don't even know why you would say it's the absence of something when curved space creates velocity, creates acceleration and velocity. It's not the absence of something, it's the creation of something. And either way, it's wrong to create it that way. To use the very force you're explaining to create the energy, you're creating an excuse for its existence. You're manufacturing it out of something manufactured out of the thing you're supposed to be manufacturing the thing out of. You're making chickens out of chickens. You're not bothering with this egg thing.
That is something, that acts on something, is an absurdity.
Something that acts on something. Well, again, space acting on something is idiotic, true. The fact that there's a field, an energetic field of bits surrounding everything and forcing solar systems together and forcing galaxies together and forcing atoms together and forcing electrons into a thing and forcing protons into a thing, and yeah, that's real.
It's equally the case that I could say a shadow would make someone cold if they sit in the shadow of the sun, but I cannot reify absence as something that does something.
No, I can't reify absence as something that does something. Well, you can if there's something on the other side of the absence. So you can understand it if it's I don't know, a wing on a plane. You could understand it. You can understand a bullet firing. You understand pressure differences. That the bullet doesn't go flying out of the gun because there's an absence in front of it. That it's going out of the gun because there's an excess behind it. Yeah, and it's the same way gravity works. You don't smash into the earth because there's nothing. Well, it is an absence, obviously, but by Einstein, it's a presence of something. So this is the contradiction. But clearly, there's an argument. Pull is impossible to describe. Pull doesn't work. Push, that you can describe push, because push is what's the right word for it? It's the first kind of cause thing. Push can be a first cause. Pull can't be a first cause because there's nothing to pull on. You get it? Where push is just so obvious that yes, you can have something and smash it into something else, but you can't have nothing and pull something.
That is an intellectual fallacy. It is unwise, it is untrue, and it is empirically so.
Vacuous mumbo jumbo. Yes, that demonstrated nothing. That was just what you call rhetoric of some kind. Just completely verbose rhetoric. Bunch of words put together, trying to say something, but saying absolutely nothing.
Not viable. You cannot
says you, arrogantly and such.
Reify absence.
Again, he's not reifying absence, okay? Einstein clearly isn't reifying absence. He's pointing out that absence or deficit creates momentums in the direction of the deficit because of our intuitive nature regarding the existence of gravity and the fact that things go down into wells, okay? So as long as we have the perceptual bias of understanding that things fall down holes because we understand gravity, then we'll fall for it. But yes, if you take it seriously, you say, well, the hole can't do it. It needs the force to do it. It needs the push. Where's the push coming from? You can't use the push you're explaining to explain the push.
Well, I tossed you out into the vacuum of space and you quickly died because there's no air there. Well, no air, absence of something, is not something that actually acts upon something.
Well, I don't know if that's a very good analogy. I mean, obviously, our dependency on the existence of air makes the absence significant. So that doesn't. It's acting in the sense that it's again the non-act is the same as the action in the sense that not acting is acting. Not going to the war is like going to the war. It's still an action and it still has an impact. I don't know what you're saying there. But I agree that you can't synthesize something out of nothing. You should synthesize it out of something. So both Feynman and Einstein, all these people, should have done better than virtual particles and bent space. These are not good explanations of a source of energy.
Absence itself is a posterior attribute of something else, and it is relational. It is posterior.
Well, whatever, fine, it's got a big ass, okay. I would agree that it's the big ass gravity that's pushing you into the earth.
This is the fallacy of a composition whereby which one reifies absence as principle or subject.
Well, the white space is always going to be important, okay? You got the space you write on, and then there's the white space that contains it. So containers are always important, and yeah, that's sort of the argument. The field is the container, the big field, and we are little things in the big field, and each little thing makes a field of its own around its influence, and collectively we become a collective of influence on the big field, and the big field action-reaction, which you push into the white space, does something to the space. So unlike writing on a piece of paper, right? I can write on a piece of paper and I don't push the white space, I don't make it compress it. But in reality, when you create matter, what you're doing is consolidating white space. So you're taking invisible space and making it visible. And that's essentially what matter is. Matter is gravity converted into something more condensed, more bits inside, more bits per square inch. And when you have enough bits per square inch, you have matter that's, hey, I can see that piece of matter, right? You know, because there's more bits per square inch. But it's really just the same bits that are gravity that are invisible. They're just closer together and in these little spirals, of course. Because they're all still moving the speed of light, so they have to be in circles, not to go anywhere. Probabilistic circles. Mathematically relevant thing, but it's not really a circle. They go this way and they go that way and they go that way and they go that way, but the net result is that eventually everything mathematically goes into a circle. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. So what was I saying? Yeah, so this white space is important. So yeah, so when the matter condenses, what happens is the field expands. See? The two are tied together. You can't do something in here without doing something to the out there. That's the conservation. Yeah. That's why Tesla's ray gun ain't gonna work. Because big force going that way means you somewhere there's big force going the opposite way. You just don't get that force shit for free. You shoot his shotgun and you're gonna end up, you know, squashed on the moon.
And this is the primary fallacy behind relativity. And Einstein and all the idiots that believe in what
well, whatever. Relativity is wrong for a lot of reasons, and it's just kind of silly in the sense that, okay, it takes advantage of something quite obvious, this idea that, you know, somebody moving 10 miles an hour can relate to somebody moving 30 miles an hour, and they can recognize certain differences and certain similarities in what's creating their motion. So they can both realize they're on the Earth spinning at a certain rate and blah, 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 and they have relative absolute speeds. But again, it reverts to an absolute speed, and in the end, that's all you really have is an absolute speed. But the trick is that your absolute speed is always conservational. Okay, my rotation on the Earth isn't really a velocity in any one direction, because I'm constantly changing the vector of my movement. And because it's a circle, half the time my vectors are being changed in that direction, and well, 1/4 of the time, and 1/4 of the time my vectors are being changed in that direction, and 1/4 this way, and 1/4 that way. So in the end, it all adds up to nothing. So over a 10-minute period, I have no velocity given to me by Earth, in the sense that all of those velocities are changing constantly. So I'm not gaining any speed. I'm not really expressing any speed, in the sense that I'm just changing the same percentage of, the same difference is always getting erased and a new motion is being replaced. I'm not adding motions, I'm just replacing a motion.
Einstein taught. Tesla knew this was BS and crap and said as much. The most meek person on the Earth never...
Really has nothing to do with anything, how meek the person is, how many, I don't know, how many people's brains he ate, or how many eyeballs he poked out. Really doesn't have anything to do with whether he understood what physics is or not.
But harm a soul, said as much. Called him a fuzzy-haired crackpot.
Right, a really stupid thing for a smart person to say.
He said his followers were stronger of mind, and eventually the truth will shine out, and of course it will. Now,
I'll bet you some money on that. I'll bet you a few cameras. You want to bet some cameras? Yeah, I'll bet you a whole bunch of cameras you're going to be wrong. We'll probably both be dead then, so I don't know, I'll leave a hole in my, you know, my tomb, so you can just drop the cameras in the hole. You won't have to, you know.
getting into breaking this into photography, well, that sounds like a long stretch, right? Photographia, photon, photos, light. If you think that the lens on your camera is a light funnel that is...
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's a bunch of matter. The lens is made out of matter, and it happens to be matter that has consistent arrangements of the little bits inside. The little solar systems are all angled the same way. And so when the photon comes in, it gets nudged by the same amount, because it's always hitting the same twist. And so it gets pushed. Yeah, that's how it works.
Funneling in particles to hit the back of your sensor or your film emulsion, then you, alas, have been sniffing the glue of quantum mechanics.
Actually, I think everything that happens on the lens happens on the surface anyway, so it's the last bit that's crooked, right? Because the lens has a surface, and it's that last crooked edge that really bends the light. The rest of it kind of just goes straight through. Yeah.
There is no such thing as a wave-particle duality. And
I agree, there's no such thing as waves. Photons go from point A to point B in a straight line at the speed of light, and that's all they goddamn do, and they don't have any wave function or any of that bullshit. And if you shoot a bunch of them out of a machine gun, well, yes, they'll have a frequency, but they're not waves. It's a frequency. It's how often the quanta reaches the surface. And so the more quanta you hit the surface with, the higher the energy, quite obviously. If they're closer together, you get more bullets per second. Dar. Double dar.
there is not one bit of evidence in this entire universe for a photon.
Well, another preposterously exaggerated statement. In my opinion. There's no evidence for anything if you're going to say I have to have a photograph of a photon. Okay, yes, there's no photographs, but you don't have any photographs either. You don't have any photograph of your wavy, bibby, babby, booby. So what's the point of this? I mean, you're not exactly, you don't exactly have material evidence to support your case, so there's no point in you wagging your finger at the prosecution's evidence. So at least he's got some.
Not one. No one has ever witnessed a photon. No one has captured a photon.
I know, but we have examined photons through every kind of, you put them in bathtubs, put them on toilets, put them everywhere, and seen what happens, and whether there's any poo in the bowl. So, we kind of know what photons are doing. They're just wrongly describing what's influencing the photons, and since they think the photons are all full of a bunch of information and doing something, calculations and all this shit, when really, no, the solar system, the photons flying through, is the thing fucking the photon up, quite obviously.
There's not one single shred of evidence on this entire Earth, present or hence, for the existence of a photon.
Well, an energy corpuscle there is evidence of, okay? So I just don't think you can deny that photons are a component of the tricky part is that the photon is just filtered gravity. So it's just gravity with a frequency again. And it's a very small, tiny percentage of gravity. I mean, the amount of gravity compared to the amount of photons is like, trillion to one kind of thing. Preposterous numbers. But photons have this unique character of having a frequency. A frequency is important. Whatever frequency they come at is sensitive. The atoms are sensitive to it. More particularly, the electrons are sensitive to it. And we already know this because we know we can tune in radio frequencies, and we can tune in light frequencies, and we can tune in microwaves. We can tune all of this stuff. So we can tune the matter to be sensitive to the arrival of these photons, and we can do that because the fact that they do come at a frequency.
Light is a coaxial circuit, a longitudinal dielectric with transverse electrical magnetic components.
There you go. Boy, I wonder what that means in German. Stupida factaria. I guess that's Italian. Whatever all that mush was. That's some title. Gee. No, photons are little bits, little corpuscles, as Feynman would say, as Newton would say. Corpuscles that go from point A to point B in a straight line at the speed of light.
Just like the coaxial cable that feeds from your satellite dish to your TV.
So that makes sense, right? Light's a coaxial cable, so the sun's shooting a coaxial cable at me. Except there's no cable, there's just the electricity, let's assume. And it's coming this way and then it goes back, so there's a constant feedback between me and the particle or something like that. So even though, like, the little bit of the universe, 15 billion light years away, that shines a little photon here, and it finally gets here, after that little bit of the universe, already supernova, blew the fuck up, is gone, somehow the energy connection still exists. Somehow the feedback loop still exists, even though it's blew up billions of years ago. Hasn't existed for billions of years, and somehow that photon's still here. How come? How come the photon's still alive?
So on and so forth. A coaxial cable, transverse electrical magnetic components, and a longitude.
Yeah, well, see, that just doesn't mean anything. So what is it doing? This loop-de-doo loop? There's the freak, like, say it's like a little tank tread and a little tank tread and a little tank tread, and the frequency is how big the tank treads are, or exactly how do I make sense out of what you're saying? How do I make a mental picture of this photony, this event, this dielectric blah 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 blah
Dielectric. Now let's get back to the idiot Einstein. Das Idiot Einstein. Einstein means idiot, by the way. Einstein, 1 stone.
Yeah, whatever. Fatty fat.
He says, we are faced with no kind of difficulty. We have two contradictory pictures of reality. Separately, the particle and the wave theory, neither of them fully explains the phenomenon of light.
Right, but that was Einstein's frailty, so to speak, that he didn't understand that the wave function was just a function of period. It was just a function of frequency, and there was no wave. There's no medium. There's no anything. There's a period, and the period is the definition of the function. The period is what makes it identifiable. It's what makes matter sensitive to it, is the fact that it hits more than once. It's the tipping argument. I've made this tipping argument before, but there's a perfect, say there's a thing standing and I hit it with objects. There's an actual perfect frequency I can hit it at where I will take advantage of its reaction and action. So I can knock it backward, it'll bend back forward, and then it'll start going backward, and if I hit it again just the right point, I'll knock it back further, and then it'll go up further, and I'll maximize that, and I can knock the thing over that way. And that's basically how matter works, is if you hit something at the right harmonic, it has the right harmonic built into it, and your frequency is of one of those harmonics, it will catastrophically break the whole thing down.
But together they do. The photon is a purely arbitrary concept, folks. Einstein wrongly...
Arbitrary concept. I mean, there's just nothing arbitrary about it. It's a quantifiable unit of creating velocity and acceleration and heat, and everything we call energy can be provoked, can be transmitted through the mechanism of a photon.
I concluded that light was a discrete wave packet. Well, it's kind of an accurate observation. The conclusion of...
Yeah, well, I'd say it's not even close to anything accurate, because there's no... Wave is just a concept for matter that is built out of tension. So you have to have a medium that possesses the tension. And, you know, that just has nothing to do with what photons are. Photons cause waves. They aren't waves.
Of course, is completely incorrect. And this is based simply upon nothing other than ancient Greek atomism, or in our modern European, what's closer to us.
Right. Well, there was nothing wrong with this atomism idea. It's just that they've misidentified the fundamental mechanism or particle and misidentified its mechanism, which is just an exchange of directional information. That energy is only revealed as an imbalance in field dynamics, so that the energy is basically invisible as long as it's balanced. If there's balance, there's nothing. And as soon as there's an imbalance, that's when you see the energy.
What it came from was Descartian atomism, Descartes. He called such a wave packet a light quanta. light quantas that he refers to, which is the basis of particle physics. And here it's in das Lichtquant, yeah.
Right, so he's just quantifying the fact that it has a specific amount of energy based on occurrence. Like again, they really didn't understand frequency properly in the sense that frequency is just a definition of how many quanta of energy arrives per second.
Einstein wrongly concluded that light was a discrete wave packet. He called this wave packet the light quanta, or das Lichtquant. Das Lichtquant!
Yeah, right. I mean, you're laughing at it, but like I said, what experiment demonstrates any invariability? Blue light, red light, then you go through the rest of the spectrum. They all have very specific energies. They don't do anything surprising. We know how much energy we have to put in to produce them. We know how much energy they transfer when they affect something. We know what they're made out of in terms of quantizing their potential to cause acceleration or velocity in matter. That's just fact. So, you can laugh at the idea of quantized energy, but it's a truth.
Oh my God. Yeah. You think particles are going through your lens and striking your sensor. Those particles are photons. So I guess if you're out shooting all day, then you need to take the lens out and turn your camera upside down and shake the photons out, right?
Well, yeah, that would be true if they trapped them, but obviously the argument is they don't. The lens is clear and translucent, but if the lens is dirty or opaque, yes, it'll get hot. So you put filters on lenses, they're going to get warmer. You do different things, you'll block photons. Those photons can get trapped, so to speak. They can reflect back and forth. They can do lots of things like that. These are all possibilities, so you can mock that idea. But it's a truth that the less clear the lens is, the warmer it's going to get, the more light you shine through it. That's a truth.
Now, I'll give you the quote below that Tesla made, and I found it, and
It's not down there, so nothing. Poppycock. Einstein's brain fart. Maybe that's what I'll call this video. Theoria Apophasis, brain farting. Yeah. Anyway, I think we're about out of time, unfortunately.
I've done more research into everything Tesla ever said more than anybody else has. I was able to digitize some of his really rare writings.
And apparently you can't make anything out of it either, right? So I guess that's, Mark Twain could, and so, yeah. Nothing anybody can understand. Anybody being fair, saying, what is that? What did he just say? Oh, it's one of these. It's a blah, 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 blah. Oh, that's what the universe is. Okay. We're made out of special purpley stuff. Yay! Spiraling purpley stuff. Yeah, I guess that's what people want to believe.
And was able to do digital searches for what he talks about fields. See, the 800-pound gorilla that shits upon and squats upon the skulls of current atomic atomistic physics, which encompasses all of quantum mechanics, quantum, quantity, i.e. physicality.
Right. Like I said, they got it right in the sense of quanta. They just have misidentified the quanta. So they've misidentified the fields in the sense that they've not acknowledged. If they acknowledge a field existing, they make it a static dead field, and then they have to dimple it to make it do something. So Einstein makes space a field, and then he bends it to create movement. So yeah, that's stupid. But if they had originally thought of the field as something that contains energy, that is active, that it has tons and tons of unkinetic energy, energy that isn't expressed until it interacts with something, well, there you go. Then you can explain gravity and magnetism. You can explain why things move. It's because the field basically pushes them. And pushing means I send something through you, you absorb it, and now you shadow something else from what would have happened. If I'm in the way and I absorb some acceleration, I've denied you those arrows. That effect is now not going to reach you. You're going to have a field imbalance, and now you're going to start absorbing arrows. I mean, it really is just that simple. And they missed it. I mean, I don't, it's hard, you know, and they missed it in the context where somebody 350 years ago gave them, yes, okay, it was a crude stick figure drawing of it, but it was so close to looking just like it, and you're just like, gee, that's just, you know, the basic idea was there, and all I had to do was a little bit of physics to make it work. And I mean physics in the sense of understanding that, oh yeah, these discrete, ultra-mundane particles, that's how Lesage described them, ultra-mundane particles. And they couldn't just go a little bit further and say, wait a minute, what if we make them purely kinetic particles? Then they're really ultra-mundane. And they just didn't do physics. They kept thinking about the fat world where raindrops splatter on your head and little splash marks fly off and that kind of crap, and that just ain't what particle theory is. Particle theory is a frictionless world where things don't break into little bits.
The particles, okay? Everything in the universe is fields, and fields are not particles. Instantaneous action at a distance is real.
Well, show me on that one, buddy.
Okay. Now you're probably going to ask me about a solar sail. Now, how does a solar sail work? Obviously, it's photons. We know if it's...
Yeah, I wouldn't bother with that one. It's the thing I would point out. I'd do something more like a voltaic cell that's creating electricity based on photons impacting it.
Deploy a solar sail out in space, that there will be propulsion. It's not extremely fast, but it works. It must be photons. No, do you know how that works?
It is extremely fast if you give it just a little bit of time because of this, you know, the idea that velocity isn't lost. There's no friction, so you just wait and you'll be going pretty fast.
Do you know how a solar sail works?
Yes, photons hit the big dish.
That's what you call magnetic repulsion.
And exactly their energy is absorbed in the
low
direction.
Magnetic permeability. Okay?
Low magnetic permeability. So he's saying photons coming from the sun are low magnetic permeability, whatever that is. Somehow it's this magnetic-y thing again. Again, the whole idea of, you know, they really made a huge mistake when they called it the electromagnetic spectrum. Because the electromagnetic spectrum has absolutely nothing to do with electricity and magnetism. It really doesn't. I mean, obviously the quanta does, but the spectrum really isn't electricity or magnetism in any shape, way, or form. Magnetism and electricity are about polarization, and they're about funneling quanta, but it really has nothing to do with the frequency of the quanta.
That which is also called a superconductor is nothing other than a supradielectric yttrium barium, in the case of a yttrium barium.